Okay, I think I think we're back on again. Yeah, I think we're back on again. So I'm really sorry. Everybody appears to have gone. Let's have a look. Okay, all right. So really sorry about that. I think that was the internet connection there. Okay, great. We're on. Brilliant. Okay. So we were talking about worry periods and worry postponement just before I went off. And so if it's cut out and you didn't hear all of that, you can Google that. That's not a health symptom. So I'd encourage you to Google that and find out more about worry periods. And if you did catch all of that, then brilliant. That's great. Okay, so we were also talking to Lindsay before we went about the letter that she received, as many of you will have received the letter telling you to self-isolate. And we were talking about how when you cope with life in a way that's sort of by distraction or an adaptive, useful avoidance to help you get on with things, when something such as that letter telling you that you're extremely vulnerable comes in, that can be really destabilizing and make you feel anxious and worried, but actually you're as vulnerable now as you were before, and maybe that's something that does feel uncomfortable, but that is something that you can come to terms with. And it's a fine time to start using those strategies that worked before, really. Take some time to adjust to that idea. If that's a new idea, feeling vulnerable, then just take some time to adjust to that, to think about that, to get some support, to talk to others. Emotional support is really key at this time if you're feeling very vulnerable. But really, there's no different from how you were before. It's just addressing those new emotional concerns, really. And we are as vulnerable as we are strong, and all of us are vulnerable in some way. So whether it's physically or emotionally, and there's a lot of strength in being able to accept that vulnerability. So I would certainly encourage recognising the strength of accepting that vulnerability within us, and that is only just one facet of us as very complicated, wonderful human beings. Okay, so that was a comment that's come in live. Hopefully we're still online. And let's go to one of the other questions. Okay, somebody's asked about, somebody said, I have a diagnosis of scleroderma. I'm off work with anxiety and stress. How do I access support services? That's a good question. So a lot of what we're talking about today and a lot of the strategies are pretty much based around managing anxiety of a certain level that's not really preoccupying you or disabling in any way. If you are experiencing anxiety or stress to that level, then I would very much encourage you to get in with your local services. I'm just reminded that this is Facebook is international. We've got Toby calling in from or commenting in from Australia. Hello, Toby. So while I can make recommendations of GPs in the UK, so if you're feeling anxious or stressed or depressed and you feel like you need to access some support, then I'd recommend that you go to your GP first to ask for a referral. What the GP will do then is either refer you themselves, or they will put you on to a self-referral, which we have in the UK, to Wellbeing services. If you feel reluctant in any way to do that, you can contact, as I said earlier, Anxiety UK or Mind or Samaritans if you feel that you don't want to access structured support. They are experts and they can offer some counselling support and some advice. But if it is to the point where you'll find it difficult to think of anything else, that you're very, very anxious and that's become debilitating, please do contact your GP. In terms of Toby from Australia or anybody else who's watching, obviously services will vary depending on where you are. So that's just for the UK, but we mostly live in a world where we need to go to our primary doctor first. So I would recommend that in any situation where you're feeling distressed and don't know what to do, your primary care provider is usually the best place to start. Okay, so hopefully that's answered that question, and I think we're still going. Let me just have a look, see if there's any other comments that are coming down. Okay, lovely. Okay, so then I want to talk about one of my other tips, which is around routine. It's really important that we maintain routine. I was only talking to a patient this morning who said that when lockdown first arrived, she slept late and watched TV a lot and hung around on the sofa, and she started to feel really not very good. She was feeling really tired, she's feeling really lethargic, and generally pretty miserable and fed up. And it's very normal to have a period of adjustment during things like lockdown. So people are finding their routines are not quite intact as they were. And actually, as human beings, we are creatures of habits. It's really important that we go back to maintaining those routines and making sure that we've got clear beginning, middle, end of the day. So I'll talk about sleep a little bit later, but I definitely recommend having in place a fixed time that you start your day, almost like a work day. If you're working from home, start at the same time every day, or if you're not working, start with some exercise at the same time every day. In our house, we do that. So my children do yoga in the morning, cosmic yoga, in fact. And I do exercise, a bit of exercise every morning as well, just to get the adrenaline pumping, wake us up, get us going. So I think that's important for everybody. And even if you have a physical health condition such as scleroderma, then there's still exercise, gentle exercise that you can do. If you're struggling with that, I think physiotherapy services are still operational, so you can still get some advice, or there may be some advice on the SRUK website around movement that you can do if you're a little restricted. But I wouldn't advise doing any exercise that you are concerned in any way may impact on your condition and the movement of your condition. But generally take it slow, keep it at a low level and build up is the general advice around exercise. Start very low, always start lower than you think you should. It's really frustrating sometimes. I know I've worked with a lot of patients who wanted to start with a jog, and actually that's not the right place to start. You don't start training for a marathon by doing a half marathon. So just start by keeping it very low level. And then have a clear end of the day as well. So a day where you're not working anymore, or you finish your activity, so that you can move into periods of relaxation or recuperation and rest for the evening. And that will definitely boost your mood. And in that routine, it's important to have variety as well. And so while it should be quite structured, there should be some flexibility within that. So you want some variation. You don't want to be doing the same things every day, but you might want to start with exercise, some form of exercise during the day. You might want to have lunch at the same time, but the activities within that can vary. And now is a very good time to take up a new hobby or a new interest, start a new book, find a new podcast. But maintaining that routine is likely to boost your mood for sure. So do try putting a routine in place and avoid sleeping in the day if you can help it. Okay, so hello to Sheila, who's joined us. I'm just going to move things down. Okay. I know there's some concern about here about services, just reading the comments, and when they're going to reopen and how that's going to impact. And it's so I think we've got Matilda here who's saying that her consultant has been redeployed. So they're concerned about getting the services that they need. It's very likely, and I think it's a fact that we need to accept that there's going to be a delay in the services, and it may be that care for other people are impacted just because of the care, just because of the impact on the NHS services. So what can we do about that? I guess the answer really is that it's the fact that we're going to have to adjust to that everybody is going to have a little bit of trouble accessing medical support, particularly specialised, in the coming months. But I see, working in the health service myself, I see that people are quickly shifting their services around so that they can provide essential care to everybody. But I suppose the thing to bear in mind from a sort of psychological point of view or emotional well-being point of view is that worry and anxiety isn't going to help, and it's not going to bring the consultations to be any sooner. It's not going to, sorry, I'm distracted by all the lovely comments that are coming up here. So worrying about this isn't going to solve the problem. So the important thing to do is really manage the worry and manage the anxiety. Do everything that you can that's within your control. We have a worry tree that we use sometimes in clinic, where you ask yourself, can I do something about this situation? If it's yes, then you go and do that. And if you can't, it's to stop worrying. And I know that's easier said than done, and maybe try those worry periods out. But at this time, anxiety and worry and stress is the last thing you want if you have an autoimmune condition, as we know that can compromise the immune system a little bit more. So it's easy for me to say, but these things are not going to, the medical services are not going to be able to reconfigure as quickly as we would like to, and that we need to adjust to that and manage our emotional responses to that. And if you do feel like you are struggling with what is essential needs in terms of your care, then do get in touch with your consultant team. And if they're not accessible, then do get in touch with the GP. But it is a situation that I know that a lot of people have found themselves in. Okay, so I'm going to go back to some of the other questions as the time is ticking on. Hello to Kathleen from Belgium. Okay, so let's see. So I've been asked about sleep. So the question is, not leaving the house and lots of anxiety is giving me issues with my sleep. What can I do to get a better night's sleep? Okay, so I would happily talk about sleep all day. It's my belief that sleep is a real core part of our emotional well-being. I don't know about you, but when I don't sleep, I'm in a terrible mood all day. I can't think straight, got concentration problems. I just really can't operate. So what can we do about that? It's very similar to routine, really. So what we know about sleep is that we have these, so it's very much hormone based. When we get up in the day, it's at that point that this sort of sleep hormone starts to build up throughout the day. So interruption of that can sometimes mean that we don't sleep well at night. So there's a number of things that we can do to help sleep. In my clinic, I give a really clear prescription. So as a psychologist, often it's a sort of more relaxed interaction between two people where I bring some expertise about psychology and the patient brings expertise about their emotional well-being. But when it comes to sleep, I'm really prescriptive. I basically just give a prescription around sleep. So if you are struggling with sleep or with tiredness or sleeping in the day, there are some key things that you can do. So let's go through them. Fixed sleeping times, that's the most important thing. Go to bed and wake up exactly the same time every day. You might need to play around with what times of day, what times work best for you in relation to your work or childcare commitments, etc. But it's always a fixed time. So I tend to go to bed, try to go to sleep lights out at 11 and then wake up at 7 o'clock. So something like that, 8 hours long. And some people will say that they need less sleep, but I found that rarely to be the case. Never, ever sleep in the day. That really interrupts that sleep pressure during the day. So I would definitely avoid that unless you are unwell with something like an infection, in which case your body might need a bit more sleep to recuperate. An hour before bedtime, have a wind down. It's good if it's the same time every day, but you want to give yourself, your body, the message that it's time to sleep. So low lighting, having something like a hot bath, going into a cold bedroom, that's a good trigger for sleep. Just doing something that isn't stimulating, not using screens before bed, an hour before bed is really, really important. Not having caffeine after 3 p.m. Because obviously that's a stimulant. Exercise is really good. So if you're feeling anxious or stressed, by engaging in some exercise appropriate to your capabilities, can get rid of some of that excess adrenaline. Those are the key aspects. Other things include not doing anything in your bedroom apart from sleep. So don't be on your laptop in there, don't work in there, no iPads, nothing at all. It should be a haven for sleep. And when I give this advice out, a lot of people look at me and say, I have to have my tea, or I just can't get up at that time. And but actually, every single case I've worked with in my career have found benefit to implementing all of those. So if you can't do them all in one go, then just do it stage by stage. Fixed sleeping patterns is the right place to start, and cutting out sleep in the day. Exercise is important. Relaxation is important as well. You need to be switching off and getting ready for bed. So hopefully that should help. The questions I often have about that is, what if I have pain? The research shows that sleep intervention works for everybody, including pain. So that should work for you as well. And fatigue as well. So I do a lot of work with chronic fatigue syndrome. Again, people can sometimes misinterpret fatigue as a lack of sleep. It's very different, and some of you will know that already, I'm sure. If you are fatigued, then you will need a different kind of support and intervention with that. It's not about sleep. Sleep is a very separate issue. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Let's have a look. Great, thanks for all of your responses. I can see I'm not going to be able to get to everybody's today. Let's have a look at some of the questions that we had before. Okay, so I'm going to try and answer a few of these at the same time by giving some general advice. So some of the questions that I've been asked are, I live alone, please can you suggest coping with isolation for people like me? How do I cope having to stay indoors during the coronavirus in order to stay mentally healthy? Okay, so there are some cool things that we can all do, me included, to manage our mental health at this time. So I would absolutely recommend turning off notifications for news. If you want to hear the news, tune into the main broadcast during the day. Being an avid radio listener myself, I've seen that everything is about COVID at the moment. So why not investigate something new, like podcasts, different radio stations that are not focused on COVID, try some new TV programs. It's really important that we are doing what we call mood elevating activities at the moment, things that make you feel good. Really, really important, things that you enjoy, and that you have some variety in that. So within that routine, incorporate some new activities that are meaningful. One of the things I think that we can do is incredibly powerful is staying in the present moment. So I talked a little bit earlier about mindfulness, and that's a really good way to help you stay in the present moment if you're feeling anxious and you're finding that quite difficult. But just considering gratitude in terms of the current situation. And while what we're facing at the moment is unprecedented and it's very stressful and there's a lot of loss out there and a lot of difficulty and illness, we all have something to be grateful for in this present moment. And if we spend our time thinking about things that happen in the future or in the past, that's going to cause a lot of distress. So a lot of anxiety is focused on what will happen, what ifs, and a lot of mood related issues relate to what's happened in the past. So if you can, if you're feeling low or if you're feeling anxious, then try and bring yourself back into the moment and ask yourself, what have you got to be grateful for right now? And that will be easier on some days than others, but just try thinking about 3 things that you're grateful for every day, and take a moment to reflect on that. And it's surprising how much that can elevate your mood substantially by just being grateful and staying in the present. So whenever you can, try and stay in the present, even if you're in a stressful situation. Taking yourself to that moment that you're in can be very helpful in terms of helping you to problem solve. Okay, and thinking about problem solving, often when we're anxious and stressed, we are not very good at solving our problems. We become very narrowed in our thinking. I think some of the questions here that I've got are around how do you cope, and that's very general. But one way to cope, I suppose, is to take a problem-solving approach to your difficulties, which then you can apply to anything. The first thing to do is to identify what the problem is. So if you think, what is troubling me right now? What are the main difficulties? And then focus in on one particular problem. So the problem that often pops into my mind is what's come up in pain management programs that I've been involved in, where people say, my mobility and my restrictions with movement mean that I am struggling to clean the bath, and the bath needs to be clean. So using that example there, what you would do then is say, okay, so the problem is the bath needs cleaning. That's the one problem, because sometimes we can be overwhelmed with several problems. Just focus on the one problem. So identify that and define what the problem is, what the challenge is. So I want to clean the bath, but I can't do that because of my restrictions. That I can't do. It's painful to move, or my hands are restricted in terms of their functioning. And then the next thing to do is brainstorm ideas. And the fun bit there is that you can think of all sorts of ideas of how to clean the bath. And again, the thing that sticks in my memory is somebody using a broom with a sponge on the end of it and tied on. And that's the beauty of it, really, is if you allow yourself the creativity to think of, brainstorm lots of ideas, then they will be weird, wild and wonderful, but they can lead to very good ideas. So if you brainstorm the ideas and then choose your top 3, consider the alternatives and weigh up these solutions to consider what is the best solution. And then you plan how you're going to do that, and then you test it. So it's very basic, really, just taking those individual steps and applying that to any problem that you have, which can be very helpful at times of stress, or if you're feeling overwhelmed with anxiety. So just to summarize those steps, so identify the problem, so focus in on the specific problem, define it, what do you need to do, what do you need to achieve, how do you know you will have done it, brainstorm creative ideas, potential ideas, and then weigh up those top 3 solutions, weigh them up, the pros and cons, the barriers, and then test them out, and you can then decide on what the best option is. So hopefully that will be helpful. Okay, so that's problem solving. We talked a little bit about meaningful activities. So it's really, what the research tells us is that boredom and frustration, which comes from boredom, is really important to take care of when you're in quarantine and isolation. We know that people who are bored and frustrated don't fare as well as those who've got meaningful activity. So if you can, think of something positive to do, think of something that you used to do, something that's meaningful, and incorporate that into your daily routine. The important thing is to ensure that your mind is occupied, and that actually there is some level of distraction for you when things do become a bit tricky. And that's not about avoidance, because avoidance, we know, doesn't work. So if I said to you, don't think of a pink elephant, what's the first thing you think of? So avoidance doesn't work very well. It really reinforces the anxiety. but accepting that things are tricky and difficult, and then shifting your attention onto something positive is useful, and it doesn't act as an unhelpful avoidance. Okay, so let's have a look what we've got here. Just looking at the comments. So we've got somebody who's saying that they suffer with anxiety when their husband goes and does a weekly shop, and the medication run. So she's in the shield category. And it sounds like she also goes as well, or she feels anxious afterwards. So if you're being shielded, then certainly do stay at home, is what I would say. And if you're feeling anxious after, so I know that a lot of people are in the position where people are going to have to go out, or family members have to go out shopping or pick things up, and then they're worried that when they come back home that they've been exposed, and they're not going to feel safe for a few days. It's very difficult managing that anxiety, but again, all of these things should be working. These strategies should work for this as well. Anxiety is very much the same between people. When you're anxious, you can sometimes feel palpitations, you feel on edge, you feel tense, and you're often thinking and worrying about things that are threat related, so that you're feeling under threat, you're feeling anxious and nervous. One of the key things you can do, you touched on it earlier, in terms of mindfulness, is relaxation. So as I said before, anxious is closely related to fight or flight response, and what we want to do is dampen down that anxiety, that arousal within the internal structures of the body that makes you feel that palpitations and on edgeness when you do feel anxious. And a great way to do that is relaxation. So there are a number of ways that you can relax. There's structured ways of relaxing, such as using mindfulness and using apps, or guided relaxation. So you can look on YouTube for different kinds of relaxation. It's very much a personal thing. What works for some people doesn't work for others. Either some people respond well to classical music they find relaxing, or whale dolphin noises they find relaxing, or a guided imagery people sometimes find useful as well. There are lots and lots of different options for relaxation, but what they're all designed to do is calm the body down, calm the breathing down. We know that when people are anxious, they tend to breathe more quickly and in a more shallow way. And again, that reinforces that anxiety in the body. So it's really important, and you can keep an eye on it yourself. How fast are you breathing? How deeply are you breathing? And to reverse that, so breathing slowly, deeply, and sort of using your lungs, as filling them up as much as you can. Doing diaphragmatic breathing is very useful as a quick intervention for yourselves when you're anxious. But also noticing, doing a body scan, noticing tension in your body, just sort of going bit by bit and noticing tension in my shoulders. So I straight away try and straighten myself up. But then by doing breathing activities and trying to breathe out that tension. Again, there's lots of relaxation available on the internet, and it can be very helpful to dampen down that anxiety. If you're feeling particularly anxious, I'd recommend that you spend 2 sessions a day doing relaxation. 15 minutes, I think, would be a good amount of time just to sort of reset the body's system a little bit. You may be somebody who actually finds most relaxation by having a cup of tea in your garden. So have a think before you try any of these activities, any of the relaxation activities. What kind of thing do you normally respond well to? There's been lots of times in clinic that people have been trying different relaxation or different exercises or different activities, such as hobbies, and they feel like they're going through the motions, just trying something new. So I would discourage anybody from just going through a list of things to try. Think first, reflect on what kind of thing you do respond well to. Even ask people around you what kinds of hobbies you've had in the past, or what they've noticed in terms of what relaxes you. Okay, so let's have a look at the comments. So exercise. Let's talk about exercise. So Elizabeth has sent a comment saying, finding the lack of exercise really frustrating from a mental health and fitness perspective. Normally very active, out and about, struggling for suitable alternatives whilst shielding, making me very grouchy. So if anybody, sort of, we've got lots of people watching at the moment, if you have any creative ideas around your exercise, please do post, so that you can give Elizabeth some ideas of what you're doing at home, because you may be in similar circumstances. But certainly not having exercise is really tricky, and I think that affects all of us in terms of, you know, feeling quite sedentary and not being able to get out. And as you've pointed out, Elizabeth, you know, fitness and exercise is really fundamental to our emotional well-being. As I said earlier, exercise is great for adrenaline. So if you've got a build-up of adrenaline in your body because of an anxiety, stress response, then exercise is brilliant for that. And also exercise gives us perspective, gives us distance from problems, and is generally very uplifting in terms of stimulating endorphins as well. So it is really important that we continue with exercise. So there's a lot out there, I know, and there's a lot of focus at the moment on exercise, but there are things like there's a lot of online free exercise classes. Yoga, as I talked about earlier, can be really very useful. It's good for relaxation and for exercise. Pilates, if you haven't tried that and you have some physical restrictions, that's actually very good because it works on different body parts and you can tailor them to what you like. I always recommend dancing as a good exercise, turning the music up really loud. It's really important that we are doing things that we enjoy, that elevate our mood. We need to find the joy where we can in this situation, because it is really very challenging. So trying dancing, yoga, Pilates, having a look on the internet for different exercises that you can do. There's so many classes now, and there's things called chair exercise, so people exercising using their chairs as well. What I would say is that with any exercise, it's important to consider what your limitations are. So we know that we're allowed out once a day to walk. Walking in nature can be very helpful. We know that spending any time in nature is therapeutic. So maybe, Elizabeth, consider your walk, whether you can walk in nature, so that you find that uplifting from both nature and also the physical exercise that you're doing. When you're walking, I would ensure that you are starting at a low level and then building up every day. That can give you a sense of reward as well if you're becoming fitter. Just by doing the same walk every day in the same place for the same amount of time and the same distance can be very disheartening and of course can make you feel a bit miserable. So do try and incorporate something that's enjoyable about that exercise that you do every day, whether it's nature, whether it's talking to somebody, making it a time where you make social contact while you're walking, trying to go further and build up your fitness, or whether it's a purposeful activity, that walking to the shops and back, or working up to walking to the shops and back. The key thing with exercise is to do something within your limitations, your capability, but also something that is really enjoyable. Okay, so I think that I've covered a lot of the things today that people have asked about. What I would say is use the strategies that you know work for you in terms of your mental health. You will have them, you've got this far, and you will have had struggles before in your life. So use the strategies that you know have already worked. Consider what strategies you're using in general. Is there anything that you're doing that's making you feel more anxious that you might want to reduce or stop altogether? But try and find some joy. Try and make sure that you find something positive to do, some meaningful occupation. There's not a lot that we can do at this time. Do what you can that's within your control, but try and find the gratitude and the enjoyment and joy where you can in your life. And last thing that I'll say is thank you so much, everybody, for commenting in and watching. But just remember that it's really okay not to be okay at this time. We don't all have to be perfect all the time, but just make sure that if it becomes too much, that you ask for help when you need it. Thanks so much.